Good morning. Welcome to Middle of the Garden Ministries podcast. This is part two of a series. There's a part one I invite you to also watch. It covers a lot of the camera equipment that I've used to capture some of these images, and also a number of videos that demonstrate some of the UAP capabilities. And just a rehash, in case you're not aware, UAP stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. And it was retitled that from what used to be called UFOs because they've been observed going into water as well as into the ground. So they are multi faceted in what their capabilities are. And so we're going to cover some of the additional videos that I have that I've captured in the night sky in this part of the podcast, as well as identify in the Bible where a lot of these capabilities are being seen, and so that Christians are not unaware of what's going on around them and who they are, because they will play a role in the end days. They're being seen everywhere. And as we'll cover here in the video, there have been a lot of whistleblowers that have stated they not only know about it, the government knows about it, but they have retrieved technological vehicles from these downed craft. But there's a lot more to it than just technology. And so we need to get into that. I've had a few personal encounters myself, and I've created a couple of animations because I was not using my camera at the time when I had those encounters, but I did want you to see what it looked like. And in case you do your own research, and I invite you to do so, don't take my word for any of the things that you're going to see today, but do your own research. However, be aware that these entities will know you're observing them. And if you're unprepared as a Christian for that, they can be very dangerous. So, not all of them are. There's some fallen, there's some that are not fallen, but you got to know who you are in Christ before you ever do any of this research, because if they spot you observing them, they will know it absolutely when you spot them. And that can be a hazardous situation if they come and check you out and you don't know who you are in Christ. So anyway, let's get to it. This is a couple of images that I've put in this slide of a particular, it's a craft shape, but I think it is actually an entity. It's not a craft at all. It just has the ability to mimic looking like one. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the markings on it, as you go through each of the images that I have seen it, when I've caught it in the night sky and then taken an image of it, its markings change. It's not consistent from image to image. So there's some analog ability or organic ability to it. In this upper left image here, it looks like it has an eye on the side of it and a mouth. And yet in subsequent images that shifts around its outer diameter. And so it's not static. I don't believe that this is its native form, and we'll get into that when I show you some other images of it and of other entities that I've caught in the night sky. Like I say, I invite you to look at my first podcast that has a lot of the camera details and how to do your own. It's relatively easy. It does require a little bit of money because you need a DSLR and a tripod and an intervalometer to do the timing on the images. But other than that, you can do a lot of this investigation yourself. So I invite you to do so. Be aware of what's going on in the skies around you. So, and I don't believe, like I say, that this is its native form. I have seen them a lot more common in a ball form. A lot of people attribute that to ball lightning or something of that nature. I've got news for you, brothers and sisters. It's not ball lightning at all. These are spiritual entities that are represented in a ball shape. Now, are they that truly? Is that their true shape, or is that just a shape that they use to traverse the atmosphere? I believe it's their true shape, but they can shape shift to other shapes, and we'll get into that here in a minute. So I would say that this is not a craft as we would understand a craft to be, and this particular one I have caught doing hypervelocity maneuvers, and I've shown this in the first podcast. It doing, at least Mach 3 and then other times up to Mach 10 going by, and I had to use the altitude of a jet and the glint lines off of it, how far it traveled versus an aircraft during the same time period in a time elapse photography. And this thing was going way, way faster than any commercial jetliner. All right, so let's get into that. So here's going to be an example of one traversing the sky, and if you look in this, hopefully you're not looking on a phone, because this is not going to come out on a phone. You can see it traveling. Right now it's like bottom, middle, and going upper left as it's traveling. And I'll play this again so you can see it. In the finished podcast, I will put arrows on it so you can see it as it travels through the night sky. This is that craft I showed you in the prior slide. And it's the one I have caught doing several Mach before. So it's not going that fast in this particular slide. Okay. So I've also witnessed these appearing and disappearing at will. And I don't know how fast they can transition from being visible to invisible to us, but it appears to be almost instantaneous. So I'm going to show you this this particular clip in slide 32, I think, and it appears and disappears in less than 15 seconds in each way. So this is something that you need to look for as you're taking images. You'll need to, if you plan on doing this research yourself, and again, I highly invite you to do it, you're going to need a dark sky somewhere. You can't do this in the city. There's too much light pollution in the city, so you have to get out in the country and do it. But, you will see these either stationary, and we'll get into that here in a little bit, what they look like when they're stationary or when they're moving. And they're a lot easier to spot when they're moving. And you can take that with a camera and see them move. You'll have to compare each image that you take to the prior image so you can see what changed from one image to the next. You're going to have to really be looking hard at the sky in your image to see them. They're pretty high in altitude, but they're absolutely observable. They are, and I also would tell you that you need, especially in your early days of doing this investigation, you're going to need to look at things like Flight Radar 24, which looks at planes. Planes look entirely different, but you'll need to understand what they look like going through the sky and how far they travel within your exposure time on your camera. So you can identify a plane immediately. And also on the first podcast, I show you in a spreadsheet how to keep track of all your images. And as you've done your research on what you've seen, to check both the satellite traffic above your area and planes. So you get good at spotting both of those, and then you can spot these, and it's very easy to identify the difference once you understand and have gotten some images under your belt where you know what you're looking at and see the difference of the two. But you'll need to do that. You need to check those, especially in your early days, so that you get pretty good at spotting the differences. Okay. So let's play this one. You can see him coming from the top here. He's coming right through the middle, and he'll disappear right there. Right near the end, you'll see a plane come into the image as well. That's on the left side. Okay, he's a streak of light. That's a plane. The craft, or the entity, really, that's in the middle is just an entity. It's not a plane. And like I say, you can see it. It's visible, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's gone. Okay. Here's another one. This one is the one I was telling you about. He's only going to appear and disappear very rapidly, but you'll be able to see it come out of, I don't know if it's camouflage or out of another dimension, and then out of the dimension. So watch what it does. It's going to be right here in the middle. See it come up, comes out, goes right back in. All right. So I think that one's pretty obvious, but it's, really quick in what it's doing. Okay. And this is just for fun. I put a meteor in here. When you look at the night sky and you're photographing it, over time you're going to get all kinds of things that you see. I saw one really large meteor come across the sky one time on my security cameras. I didn't put it in this presentation, but I mean, it was big and it lit up the sky all around. So it's pretty interesting. Anyway, this one will come from the left upper side, and then once it burns up, you'll see a puff of smoke behind it, a red puff of smoke. So see it? Anyway, it's just a little bit of interest. I'll play it again. Anyway, kind of cool. I just thought that was an interesting meteor that came down. Okay, so this is another way that they represent themselves, and I think just as fascinating, but a lot harder to spot. And that is that some will just hang out in the sky in one location. They may only be there for, maybe 10 minutes, and then they will shift to another region of the sky and be there for a few minutes, and then shift to another region, and so on. So they look, if you were to look up with your naked eye, there is absolutely no way you would spot them, because they will look just like another star in the sky. And I've brought this out in this this image here, and then this slide that I believe that this is part of the Vasco project issue that they've had. Vasco, we'll get into it more in a few minutes, but it's vanishing objects, celestial objects, over a century of observations. So they're stars that they shot in the 1950s, star images in order to do, and it was the Navy, and they were looking at navigation by celestial objects. And they took a bunch of images of the sky in the 1950s, and then the Vasco project has compared them with images today, and they have identified over 800 stars that have gone missing. There's no supernova, there's no black hole, there's no remnant whatsoever of it. And I'm definitely going to tell you that what they caught was what I call these watchers. I call them watchers because I think that's what they're doing. They are observing us. And in Daniel chapter 4, verse 13, it states, I saw in the visions of my head on my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven. So I will call them watchers as well, because I think that's what they're doing. They're observing. And there's only one way to catch these. If you're doing a time-elapse photography, what you will see is that the star background behind them will move, but they don't move. And because the Navy only had one image of that region of sky, they could not see, as a sequence, the background stars moving while they stood still. They only caught what they thought was just all stars. Well, that's not the case. And we're also going to see, when we get into the biblical references, that stars are likened to angels. They are, vice versa. The angels are talked about as stars, like in the book of Revelation. And there's a good reason, because as you shall see, they illuminate like a star in the sky, and you can't tell the difference. Except if you're doing time-lapse photography, they will stand still while everything around them moves. Okay, so let's look at this this slide here. There's one right here in the middle, upper middle. He's getting brighter right now. You can see it brighten up. You see it? Okay, that is one. And then there's another one that's actually moving here to his left, sorry about that. And it's going from the bottom to the top. You see, it's right about middle left right now, and it's going upwards. Yeah. The real bright one there's several in this picture, by the way. It's not just two, it's several of them. And it's quite interesting. They came as a group. Anyway, if you look up here in the upper right, there's another one that is. Now, one other thing I'm going to tell you about is that when you're shooting these, you need to make sure your camera, you've taken darks. I don't know if you know anything about astrophotography, but you need to be taking your darks. And you look for dead pixels as well. So don't try to identify something in your image that may be a dead pixel in your sensor on your camera, okay? Your camera lenses need to be free of dust, etc., okay? So I make sure all this is done and checked, and I know exactly what these are, okay? So let's watch it one more time here. Like I say, there's one here in the middle. He's brightening up quite a bit. And then there's one in the upper right. He's also stationary. And then you got this one moving that is going from the bottom toward the top. All right. There's also some others in there, but I'm not going to point them out there. It's actually probably has 6, maybe more in there. They sometimes do this as a group. I don't understand what they're doing. I don't know what their assignment is other than to watch. But I think that's what they're doing. Now here, I'm going to look at some other watchers. And I'm going to have to apologize. I stopped it here just a moment. I'm going to have to apologize a moment about this video. I live in a pretty dark sky country area, but I live close to a road, and occasionally a car will come by and mess my images up with their headlights. So in this series, that's what happened. One of them came by, and then so there's a couple of frames missing, and it jumps for a second. So I apologize. It's not smooth, but that's what happened. Okay. Anyway, let's look at it. It's right here in the middle. You'll see it brighten up. There went a car by. See it here in the middle? There's one. And then it changes. See it up near closer to the top now? And then look over here to the left middle. So I know this is going to really seem outrageous. Okay, we're going to watch this here again in a sec. I know this is going to seem kind of far-fetched unless you watch them do it yourself and over. It appears as if they can walk through an area of space, and then as they're walking through one area, they can be coming out in another area at the exact same time. It's like if you had 2 doors or 3 doors of different rooms all in a row, and you opened all the doors and then put your leg through all the doors. You could see a piece of your leg through every door, but it would be only one leg. And I believe that's exactly what they can do. That's an incredible ability, but these entities are beyond anything we understand. They defy physics because I believe they're working through a whole different process at the quantum level than what we see in our 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. So, okay, let's watch that again. So as you can see, there it is in the center. It gets brighter, then it gets dimmer. And then, of course, this car is going to pass here in a sec. See, it gets brighter again. And then as it fades out here in the center, you look in the right middle, you can see it fading in, comes in. And then as it fades out, look over here in the middle left as it comes in. And then it fades back out. Anyway, quite interesting what they can do. Okay, here's another one. It's I saw a UAP go head-to-head with an American Airlines flight. This American Airlines 1907 that was out of Morocco. Yeah, I used flight radar to see what the plane was. And I sent this video to American Airlines too, to ask the pilot what he saw. Because I figure he must have seen it coming straight at him. So the aircraft will be coming here from the right down, and then the UAP is coming from the bottom left up, and they meet just left of middle. So you can see the aircraft, and here comes the UAP from the, he's dimmer. It's not as bright as the airplane. And then once it meets up with the airplane, it's gone. It's disappeared. And I think what this is, he was in a ball farm, his native farm, and it went inside that plane. I believe it's possible it had somebody in that plane that it needed to meet. It needed to get in there. And so it went inside that plane. I don't know that for certain because these are time-lapse photos. It could have veered at the very last moment and gone off at high Mach speeds instead of going into the plane. But I don't believe so. It looks like it was a deliberate act to meet that plane. Well, let's watch it one more time, and then I'll go to the next. Look for the UAP coming right here. See, out of the bottom. Boom. Plane kick goes on, but the UAP has disappeared. So, there's a lot of talk from one of the naval aviator pilots, Ryan Graves, about the safety of these with jetliners. And while I believe that there may be some aspect to that could make it unsafe if they're in a solid form, but as in these ball form that are more ethereal, holographic almost, they don't appear to be any danger to the planes. They go inside the plane. They can pass through it. They can do whatever. So, very interesting at any rate. So now let's look at some scriptures that are alluding to the capabilities of spiritual entities. God doesn't put things in the Bible that have no relevance or that are to be known after we go to be with the Lord. Once we go on to be with the Lord, everything will become clear. But before that time, things are not clear. And so when the Lord puts something in the Word, it's there for a reason. It's to give diligent searchers of the truth the deep information about heaven and the operation of the world as both a material place and a spiritual one. In these latter days, much more of this is to be revealed as prophecy unfolds and the day of the Lord approaches. I think we'll know a whole lot more, especially when disclosure takes place. But I want to caution you as Christians that I think part of what's going to happen is that if they become absolutely disclosed 100% about, and we even see them, they will say that they seeded the earth. I think the danger is they're going to try to persuade people that they're our God. I think that's where the real danger lies. Okay? The fallen ones are not good. They are liars, and they will say anything. But the truth is, we were not seeded by them. God created us. Okay? And so we have to watch what's coming. I think it'll become pertinent. So let's look at Ezekiel chapter 1, verses 4 through 21. And this is the vision that Ezekiel had of the cherubim that were around the throne and what they were doing. Okay. So, and I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the middle thereof was the color of amber, out of the middle of the fire. Also out of the middle thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man, and every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings, and their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their four sides. And they four had their faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went. They went every one straight forward. And I'm going to pause here just a moment. This is definitely one of the things you see UAP doing. They are not flying. Okay, that's one of the reasons UFO is a misnomer now, because they don't fly in the sense that we know of flying. They don't have wings which support the weight of the aircraft, and that's not the way they fly. So they don't need to bank. They, as I've shown in the first podcast, where they were going high Mach speeds, they were turning around in 180 degrees at high Mach speeds without slowing down, and doing it, turning around like a knife edge. So what I mean by that is they would go straight and then they'd turn off a little bit, just a little bit, and come down a little offset from where they went up. And they would do that back and forth. So, one, there is nothing man-made that can withstand the G-forces involved in those turns, okay? To turn around 180 degrees without banking at all and without slowing down at Mach 3 to 10 would be over 500 Gs. You know, even in the case of 5,000 Gs for Mach 10, and just having, you know, mass of a body of, say, 200 something pounds of a person, you would turn to mush. If you had a seatbelt on, it would just cut right through your body, and you'd be mush on the wall, and the metal would fatigue and blow out on it. So this is not a man-made craft. There is no way it can be a man-made craft by anything we know with physics or technology. Okay, so, but this is demonstrating what they're able to do is they're not turning around as they went. They're just going in straight angles. Okay, and we're going to find out too, they're going extremely fast. Okay, let's get to verse 10. As for the likeness of their faces, they four had the face of a man, the face of a lion on the right side, and the four had the face of an ox on the left side. They four also had the face of an eagle. And I'll tell you, this is what they look like. This is not symbolism. This is how these entities actually are looking to Ezekiel. Thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward. Two wings of every one were joined one to another, and two covered their bodies. And they went every one straight forward where their spirit was to go. They went, and they turned not when they went. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was burning coals of fire, like the appearance of lamps. It went up and down among the living creatures, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. So some of these entities that you'll see in ball form, that they've been likened to ball lightning. And like I say, this is what they're looking at as spiritual entities. And the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. So they were going high speeds, very high speed. Like Ezekiel's equating it to the flash of lightning. And the encounters that the Nimitz group, for example, had with David Fravor, they calculated it was going over Mach 50. That's 50 times the speed of sound. It went 60 miles in just like a second. And it came from, space essentially down to 5 feet above the water. Ryan Graves and his group saw it go 5 feet above the water in a second. And if you even calculate the amount of power to do that with anything that has mass, you're looking at nuclear power, the equivalent of nuclear bombs going off. That's how much energy these things would have to be expending if they had mass. Now, I think that when they're traveling around, they either are massless or they're using 0 point energy or something in the fabric of space. But that's how they travel. Anyway, we'll get back to it. They were going at speed, a flash of lightning. Now beheld the living creatures. Behold, one wheel on the earth by the living creatures, with his four faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like the color of beryl, and they four had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they went on their four sides, and they turned not when they went. As for their rings, they were so high they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them four. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. When the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Wherever the Spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go. And the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. So I think that what we have to take away from this is that their life force can be within inanimate objects even. So seeing things that are in the shape of a craft or something of that nature does not mean that it is a drone or, non-intellectual. It's guided by a force, an entity. All right. When those went, these went, and they stood. When those stood, these stood. When those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them. The spirit of the living creatures was in the wheel. Just amazing. So we need to compare this with the throne scene in Revelation as well, because there is something that we can learn from the difference of the same creature at the throne in Revelation. So let's look at Revelations chapter 4, verse 6 through 8. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like to crystal, and in the middle of the throne and round about the throne were four beasts, full of eyes before and behind. And the first beast was like a lion, the second beast like a calf, the third beast had the face of a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. Well, wait a minute. In Ezekiel, that was all one entity. Each beast had four faces. This is those same faces divided into four different ones. Okay. And the four beasts had each of them 6 wings. Okay. Went from 4 wings to 6. And they were full of eyes within, and they rest not day and night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, which was and is to come. So let's do a comparison, as I've stated. One, like in verse 9, they're in Ezekiel, their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went straight forward. And in 12, everyone went straight forward where the Spirit was to go. They went, turned not what they went. So again, they move at angles. They do not bank when they turn. And this is a mark of most UAP. If you see them during the day, they look like very odd in their navigation. They'll bounce almost like a bird would do. And that is one of their marks as to how they move. If you look at the testimony from David Fravor about the Nimitz encounter when they first encountered the Tic Tac, that's what he was saying. It was darting back and forth across the water. Okay, and that's exactly what you see these do. And how fast does it go? Well, we already talked about going the appearance of a flash of lightning. And UAP are demonstrating their Mach 50 or higher. They'd run circles around anything we have in the military, the fastest things we have. Even if we have a hypervelocity missile going Mach 10, which is amazing, extremely fast, these will just circle it, just run circles all around it. We can't even remotely come close to what they demonstrate. So, and again, their appearance can change, okay, as well as add or separate. Like I stated in Ezekiel, you see all four in one entity. There are four entities, but four of them are in one each. So it had four faces and six wings, and then or four wings, and then here in Revelations, it's each one is separated individually, and then there's four wings. So what this tells us is they have the ability to separate or to morph. They can become something else. They can either split apart or become something like one of the individual faces. I think that's a high mark of spiritual entities, that they are able to morph into other things or other, even inanimate objects. So if you want to know how well they could hide from us, if they were to observe us, some have entertained angels unawares. They could be something right next to you and you'd never know they were there. I mean, it's just beyond imagination. It's just so amazing. So also, let's see, I already talked about that they're co-joined in Ezekiel, but then split in Revelations. There is a customs enforcement video that was shot in infrared of a UAP going around the airport. And it went around the airport and then went into the water, just kind of barely into the waves. And it split apart into two separate entities. Now, what they try to tell you is that maybe that's a reflection, that you're getting a reflection from the first entity. And so it looks like you have a second one. I'm sorry to tell you or tell them, but that's not the case. They have this ability to split, and mass doesn't mean anything. So if you have a craft of a certain size, let's say it's, 3 meters or something in size, the one that comes out of it when they split may be 3 meters as well. They are like an interactive hologram. They are not anything like you can imagine in our material world. You don't have a reference for that. So I've witnessed a craft shape and I've witnessed ball shape, both of them up close. And I'm going to show you those in a little bit, but let's go through some of the scriptures about the capabilities. We're going to look at some of the things that Yeshua did, and then what some of the disciples did to show you, after they were endued with power. So let's look at Luke 24, verses 12 through 32. Then arose Peter and ran unto the sepulchre, and stooping down, he beheld the linen cloths laid by themselves, and departed, wondering in himself at that which had come to pass. And behold, two of them that went the same day to a village called Emmaus, which was from Jerusalem about 80 furlongs. And they talked together of all the things which had happened. And it came to pass that while they discussed together and reasoned, Jesus himself drew near and went with them, but their eyes were held that they should not know him. And we're going to see what that means in another passage too. And he said unto them, what manner of words are these that you have one to another as you walk, and are sad? And one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answering, said unto him, are you a stranger in Jerusalem, and have not known the things that have come to pass in these days? And he said unto them, what things? And they said unto him, concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and have crucified him. But we hope that it was he who should have redeemed Israel. They were looking for the second coming. They didn't understand about the first coming. And besides all this, today is the third day since these things were done. Yea, and certain women also of our company made us astonished, who were early at the sepulchre. And when they found not his body, they came, saying that they had also seen a vision of angels, who said that he was alive. And certain of them who were with us went to the sepulchre and found it even as the women had said, but him they saw not. Then he said unto them, O foolish ones and slow of heart, to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them all the scriptures of things concerning himself. And they drew near unto the village where they were going, and he made as though he would have gone further. But they constrained him, saying, Abide with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is far spent. And he went in to tarry with them. And it came to pass, as he sat down with them, he took bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they knew him, and he vanished out of their sight. And they said one to another, Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us by the way, and while he opened to us scriptures? So he was able to change his appearance. And we're going to see here in Mark, that's exactly what they say. Mark chapter 16, verse 9 through 12. Now when Jesus was risen early the first day of the week, he appeared to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 demons. And she went and told them that had been with him, as they mourned and wept. And they, when they had heard that he was alive and had been seen of her, believed not. After that, he appeared in another form unto 2 of them as they walked and went into the country. So it's revealed in these passages, as well as others, like John 20, chapter 20, verse 15, that the Lord can take different forms. This ability is not limited to the Lord. He's now in his resurrected and glorified body, so he has this ability. I think he had it before, actually, because we'll see in another passage how he was able to cloak himself and go right out of the temple, right in the middle of people who were there to stone him. Anyway, but he has a lot more abilities than just this, change his appearance. And we'll see in Revelation that that he looks totally different in Revelation. For example, he can be a lamb physically. He can be looks like a huge angel, with very tall and eyes of fire and sword coming out of his mouth and a robe that's white. It gives off light and skin like burnished brass. So anyway, if we compare Ezekiel and Revelation, we can see the same thing can be said for angels. Like I showed you in the cherubim. It's my belief that they can change their appearance depending on their task that they are required to perform. Now you'll notice that in most passages, when angels interact with men, they appear as men. But that does not mean that they can't be other things. I believe they can, and we'll demonstrate that they can. Okay, anyway. They may be able to even look like inanimate objects. It's like in Ezekiel's vision, the wheels within wheels, and their spirit was in the wheels. And it allows them to hide in plain sight and observe us. They may become anything. A passing cloud overhead. I mean, absolutely anything. And through my own research and personal investigation, I have concluded that spiritual entities are very much like interactive holograms. They can become what they need. And a hologram, however, that can materialize into solid form or dematerialize back out of this realm when needed. You may have even interacted with one and not even known it. It may have taken the form of a human or maybe of an animal. I do not know the extent of their shape shifting ability, but it could be unlimited. While some people think that much of what is revealed in Ezekiel's vision of heaven is symbolism, I maintain it is not. It is an ability. It's what they look like. Now, did God create them to be symbolic at the same time as being able to do other things? Yes, I think there's a lot to that. But it's not symbolism. He's actually stating what they really look like or can look like. And I have seen this aspect with UAPs myself. And while I will restrict my analogy to solid scriptural references, I believe that demonic forces have used this ability in the past and present to create paranormal stories all over the globe. Spirit animals, shapeshifters, La Llorona, the Hat Men, shadow people, doll spirits, ghosts are all manifestations of these fallen spiritual entities. You know, as a spiritual entity, they could be observing you throughout your entire life and know everything you've done, even hidden things, just as much as you do. And if they wanted to impersonate you after you had passed on, they could shapeshift to your image and then pretend to be you. So, God tells us what happens to spirits after a man passes. So do not believe that there are ghosts that are wandering around. I don't believe that's the case at all. And as I've stated, angels from the Lord that interact with men do not interact to bring fear, unlike those I've mentioned in the sentence above, like shadow people. Some people have stated, they see this shadow of a man standing next to their bed and they become very fearful. Well, that's not of God. That's a fallen spirit doing that. So God's angels interact with men in the form of a man. It's not that they do not take other forms, and they may, to hide and observe, but I don't think that they interact in those forms. This would have brought fear to a superstitious people in the past. So if we look at 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. So let's look at a case of teleportation, because I've already shown you that some of these watchers, as they are in the sky, can move several miles away, like putting their foot through a doorway and then walk through that doorway to the other location. So let's look at a case of teleportation, for example. John chapter 6, verse 15 through 21. Yeshua had just finished preaching in Tiberias and feeding the 5,000, after which he went up to a mountain to pray. Matthew and the other disciples got into the boat and were rowing/sailing to Capernaum, which is around 6 miles by the sea. Jesus, it states in the Bible, met them halfway while he was walking on the water. John records that after Jesus got into the boat, the inhabitants immediately reached land after he got in. This was a teleportation of over 3 miles. And while the other Gospels did not record this does not invalidate the event, only that they had recorded a different aspect of the journey, such as Peter attempting to meet Jesus on the water. Okay, let's look at another example of teleportation in Acts chapter 8, verse 39 through 40. And the angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, saying, arise and go toward the south to the way that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza, which is desert. And he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who had the charge of all her treasure and had come to Jerusalem for to worship, was returning and sitting in his chariot and reading Isaiah the prophet. Then the Spirit said to Philip, Go near and join yourself to the chariot. And Philip ran thither to him and heard him read the prophet Isaiah and said, Understand what you read? And he said, How can I, except that some man should guide me? And he desired Philip that he would come up and sit with him. The place of the scripture which he read was, He was led like a sheep to the slaughter, and like a lamb dumb before his shearer, he opened not his mouth. And in his humiliation, his judgment was taken away. And who shall declare this generation? For his life is taken from the earth. Isaiah 53. And the eunuch answered Philip and said, I pray you, of whom speaks the prophet of this? Of himself or some other man? Then Philip opened his mouth and began the same scripture and preached to him Jesus. And they went on their way. They came to a certain water, and the eunuch said, See, here is water. What does hinder me to be baptized? And Philip said, If you believe with all your heart, you may. He answered and said, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And he commanded the chariot to stand still, and they went down into the water, both Philip and the eunuch, and he baptized him. And when they came out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord caught away Philip, that the eunuch saw him no more, and he went on his way rejoicing. But Philip was found at Azotus, and passing through, he preached in all the cities till he came to Caesarea. So I've looked at this on the map, the ancient map of that time period. Philip was teleported approximately 65 miles from where he was to Azotus. So by foot, that would have been at least, if he could travel 20 miles a day, that'd be a minimum of 3+ days, 4 days. But I think because of the terrain, that's not possible. That would probably be a week's worth of travel or close. So it saved Philip a whole week of hoofing it on foot.